Welcome to my dad's car. Enjoy!
Welcome to My Dad's Car, a podcast discussing our personal relationship with automotive nostalgia. And you know what? It doesn't even have to be about your dad's car. It can be your mum's, your grand's, your parents', guardians, or even a neighbour's. If it made an impression, let's talk about it. Good morning, John.
Good morning to you, Andy. How are you doing?
Yeah, we're okay, thank you. And yourself?
Very well, very well.
So, what I thought we'd talk about today is where our parents got their cars from.
Yeah, good stuff.
So yeah, we'd get second-hand cars, so we'd kind of go through the paper or whatever and pick some cars out of there. I remember my mum bought a Peugeot 309 once, which was gold, and we bought it on a rainy night in the dark. And it turned out kind of within a week the head gasket had gone. It was an absolute dog. But I went with her, and because I had an interest in cars, I was probably only about 12, so not particularly qualified at this state in my life.
No, did the pound coin test and the tyre kick.
Yeah, I think that was about it. We probably had a look under the bonnet, and like there was squirter fluid, so yeah, it was a goer.
That's fine. Yeah.
So yeah, we bought that, and yeah, it was a dog. I don't think we did anyone over kind of selling it. I think she sold it as a spares or repair rather than a sort of polished it up, new air freshener, and kind of put £100 on it. Like She wasn't a sort of an Arthur Daly.
Yeah. Two previous owners, vicar's wife and a doctor.
Yeah, never raced or rallied. Only done a couple of jumps, bank jobs.
Never been out of third gear. Yeah.
Lovely car. Back seat's never even been sat in.
No.
How about your folks? Where were they getting their vehicles from?
So my mum didn't drive, so the car was very much Dad's domain entirely. I didn't get involved at all on the choice of cars. I was too young really to even do that, I think. But it wasn't really on the table for me or my brother anyway. He had an Audi for a long time, Audi 100.
Okay. He liked a big saloon then. That was kind of his bag.
Yeah. I think there's a bit of a Sweeney and a Minder sort of affiliation. He had a Tash as well.
Briefcase.
So I think he definitely not. Yeah, no briefcase. I definitely think that was a thing, though. I think there was parents from that era, obviously the 80s, professionals, like I mentioned, Sweeney, Minder, all driving around in big saloons, that sort of thing. So yeah, he had the Audi. He had that for a good few years, and I think it was a really good car from memory, from what I'm told. But I think it got to the point where I believe he got it on finance. He paid it off, and I think once that was paid, his friend was a car dealer actually down in Reading. Terry, his name was his best friend. Of course, his name was Terry, and he was like one of his best pals. So I think it was kind of a case of Terry saying to my dad, look, you're done with the Audi now. Why don't you move on? Let's start getting serious, and why don't we go for a Merc? And I think my dad's immediate reaction was maybe a bit beyond what I can afford, or beyond sort of more run-of-the-mill vehicles. It's a Merc back then was a Merc, wasn't it? It's not like now where they're not that I'm saying Mercs are bad cars now, but
yeah.
Having a Merc in sort of late 80s, early 90s, there wasn't many around, and I guess it's the equivalent now of like having a Roller or a Bentley, isn't it? So yeah, I think what happened was my dad thought he was getting a Mercedes 190, which is like the baby in the range. And this is crazy as well to think that he's getting a new car which he's never seen before. He's just going off a phone call with Terry. Terry's saying this car's a straight car, trust me.
Was this a second-hand car? Was this kind of
Yeah. No, it was. I think the car was an A plate, 83. I think is that A. And I think he got this car in about 88, 89.
Okay.
So it wasn't brand new, but I mean, it was a special car at this time.
Yeah.
So yeah, he thinks he's getting a 190, going off what Terry's told him. And obviously there's nowhere to really search for what cars you're getting from Mercedes, is it? Unless you go to the dealership and pick up a catalogue.
Do you remember I was thinking earlier, actually, do you remember the Parker's guides?
Yeah.
Where they had to kind of tell you what they were worth and stuff. I remember going through those at college and trying to find the vehicle with the most power with the lowest insurance group. Like the Bluebird Turbo was the holy grail for the student. It was like...
That's it.
That was the internet, wasn't it, for cars? It was the kind of
It pretty much was, yeah.
No sort of website or whatever. It was the Friday ad or the yellow free ads or a proper Auto Trader.
I think that was what you were shown. As soon as you were handed that book,
Mm.
that was like, and this is what you do with it. It was an enjoyable time getting an Auto Trader in your hand, wasn't it? And going through and looking at what you can't afford, basically. So going back to Dad's scenario, he was getting a car, which he knew was a Mercedes, and he thought it was a 190. Anyway, the day that the car arrives, it turns up, and it's quite clearly not a 190, it's an S-Class. So it's like the big gun of the range. There's a 280 SE in silver.
Like some sort of diplomat mobile.
Pretty much was, yeah. I mean, it turned up and we thought Joe Pesci was going to roll out the back of it or something. And yeah, I think I don't know if Terry brought it. I assume he did. And I think my dad basically said, "Oh, I don't think he was dead set on taking it because he was like, it's a bit flash, Terry, isn't it?" Anyway, obviously he was talked around and he kept it, and he had the car for the best part of 20 years in the end, until we replaced it. So yeah, that car kind of became a big part of our lives because it was around for so long, and he loved it. Like I say, there weren't many around. There certainly wasn't many of those around in the little village where we lived. So it was great being driven around in it, dropped off to school. You felt like royalty jumping out of that.
So did you have, you've got a couple of brothers, were they kind of just rolling around in the back with you?
Yeah, one of them would have been. We used to also pick up our school runs. This is the sort of bloke my dad was. He did the morning run, but he didn't do the afternoon run because I think he's probably having a nap or something.
He'd not been at work, I guess.
He would have been, because we ran a newsagents at the time. So he did used to have to get up very early, in fairness, to do newspapers and stuff like that. So come the end of the day, he was, just about able to get up and watch Countdown and have a cup of tea. Yeah, I think the school run, we used to pick up a couple of people that my dad was friends with the parents of. I don't know where he met them. Most likely the pub, I'd assume.
Or in the shop.
They may have popped in the shop, to be fair. Let's go with that one. So yeah, we dropped those two guys off at the same time. I assume it was quite a nice treat for them, coming in the back of the Merc every day. A bit of an upgrade on the Cavalier, or whatever it was the chap had. So yeah, I think my brother was he's 5 years older than me, so he was probably making his own way to school by that point.
Yeah.
Unless it was raining, of course, and then I guess he would have jumped in the car. So yeah, I mean, it was great on trips to Wales. We used to holiday in the UK mainly.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you really couldn't ask for a better car to be a passenger in, to be honest. It was great. It was great.
I wonder how many times you wished you'd had the 190.
Well, actually, with regards to the 190, there is a bit of a story. So Dad used to take his Merc to Portfield's garage in Chichester, which I believe is now a Peugeot garage, which is very sad, to be honest. But Portfield's was really nice, and it's one of those places where if they sort of let you go in the garage as a kid, it was absolutely spotless. Like, this is when like Mercedes and they were building things properly and all that kind of stuff. Anyway, I think he took his car in for its service at one stage, and they gave him a 190 as a sort of relief car, courtesy car, which he had for a few days, and he hated it in terms of obviously it was a good car, but in terms of playing it off against the S-Class, he didn't like it at all. So yeah, I think that worked out rather well in the end.
Yeah,
being lumbered with the bigger vehicle.
Good work by Terry there. Really knew his customer.
Yeah, well played, Terry.
Of the cars he had, would you say it was the Mercedes you'd most associate with your dad?
I would say the reason that the car thing is such a sort of strong link to my dad is he had that old Merc for donkey's years, and the car over time, as they do, those old Mercs, they just rust. And obviously we live on the south coast, so the sea air and stuff got its teeth into that car, and sort of not long before he passed, it was a pretty rusty shell. We didn't know that he was going to pass away when he did, but I think about a year or so before he did, his health wasn't great, his mobility was poor, but we happened to see on eBay, I think it was me actually, I saw on eBay the same car as what my dad had, the rusty one, but a pretty pristine version of it in a different colour. So I kind of messaged my brothers at the time, my two brothers, and said, what do you think about this idea of buying this car and just taking his old one out of the garage and putting this one in? And then when he goes down there, he's going to be like, well, what the hell's this? So they were both like fully in agreement. Yeah, we've got to do this. It's a great idea. So I think I was watching it on eBay, and had a matter of hours left. And I think I might have even been working in that place where we used to work together that sells motoring parts and wipers and fits them quite badly.
They could be a new sponsor.
We fit them nicely, though, in fairness, didn't we, Andy? So I remember going over to, there was a PC in that store that we worked in the corner under the stairs, that was used for sort of doing finance on horrendous alloy wheels.
For people who shouldn't have got finance.
Exactly, yeah. So I remember going over there, going onto eBay and seeing sort of thing ticking down, and I think we were leading bid, and then it finished, and then it was like, you've won. And then the sort of reality kicked in of, oh, this is it's actually happening now. We've got to go and get this car. I've never bought anything off eBay either, I don't think. Not in terms of a vehicle. And the guy was down in Bournemouth, so he's about an hour away. So Matt and I went to get this car, my brother Matt, that is.
Yeah.
We drove over there in my Polo, I think. Mark II Polo, wasn't it? Good little car. This is spiraling a lot now, isn't it? But anyway, we drove over to Bournemouth. Matt got in the Merc and then drove it back. And then instantly there were issues with this Merc on the drive back.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I think it was like sort of small things, but I remember the wipers just refused to work. And it definitely had a massive blow on the exhaust, which we knew instantly when we started it up. But you can't really do anything once you've bought the car. At least back then, I didn't think you could. I think once you'd bought it, you were kind of binded to take that thing away. Got it back to my brother's house. And then I got out of my car, because obviously we were travelling separately.
Yeah.
And then his face looked quite sort of pale. I thought, this doesn't look great. And he was like, yeah, this just doesn't feel good, this car. It doesn't sound good. This isn't working. I think we've bought a bad one here. So then we both kind of like trundled inside and just sort of sat down, looking at each other like, what do we do now then? We're like, we can't give Dad this heap. And so then I think what we did was basically just took sort of 5-10 minutes out and just thought, look, well, let's go out there and have a proper look at it. So I think we went out, and then the wipers, I believe, was just like a blow-on fuse or something, so fixed that pretty much instantly. And then the blow on the exhaust, I think we popped it along to the garage, and I just said, oh yeah, it's nothing major, just a little bit of welding on the exhaust. The car was probably 15-20 years old at this stage anyway, so we got that sorted. I'm sure the car was probably like a colander underneath the exhaust and stuff, but so yeah, it looked nice on the outside. That was the main thing. I think we took the car back to either mine or my brother's and gave it a good clean. Something that we were relatively good at, we thought anyway. So by the time we finished, the car actually looked quite stunning. And we got it back to where my dad lived and just sort of positioned it around the side of the block of flats where he was. And I think we went upstairs. I think he might have been asleep or something. Liked an afternoon nap. Even when he was in good health, it was kind of a thing. So anyway, we went round, he woke up, and then we kind of said to him something, are you all right just to pop downstairs? I've got something to show you. And then I think one of us handed him the key to the new Mercedes, and he looked a bit sort of puzzled. I think he probably thought it was like a mobility scooter or something.
Yeah.
Which would have made sense, obviously, because, you know, like I said, his mobility was poor. It wouldn't have been the sort of thing he would have wanted. So that probably kind of adds up as to why his face looks a bit puzzled. Anyway, went downstairs, opened the door. It was a really sunny day as well. So literally come out of the flats, car's sitting there. It's kind of like a shimmery, not a deep green, but like a turquoisey, greeny blue. And it's honestly like just reflecting in the sun. Looks amazing. So he kind of walked out. I think he clocked it, but he didn't realise, oh, that's for me. But then we kind of like directed him to it. I mean, obviously it took us like half an hour to get down the stairs. Surprised there was still sunlight. And then, yeah, when he kind of put 2 and 2 together, he was, you know, he genuinely just didn't cry or anything. None of us cried, but I think we were all quite sort of taken aback. And obviously, you know, he opened it. He's like, I can't believe it. I think obviously in his mind, it probably took him right back to when he first got his original car, which I'm assuming he'd now probably completely forgotten he even owned, because he's got this new updated version. But it was a nice gesture, and it wasn't particularly costly to us. And actually, I think he went on to live for another 6 months or so. But I think that gave him quite a nice lift, gave him a reason to get out of the house, that sort of thing. So yeah, that was just a nice thing we left with him before he popped off. So yeah, that's kind of why that car is a bit special to me. And if I had a garage, I would certainly be looking to get my hands on one before they all do rust away entirely. So maybe one day. But yeah, that's just quite a nice story that sort of sums it up, really, doesn't it? Why a car can be quite sort of sentimental, can bring back some nice memories.
How did he feel about getting rid of the other one? Had you already snuck the other one off?
No, we still had that. I think I sold that on eBay for about 180 quid, which looking back is just insane. You know, if I had the time and space, I could have broke that vehicle down. But I mean, it wasn't about the money at all at that stage. I don't think he cared, Andy, to be honest, that car was going at that stage, because this new one had come along. That was just like an old divorced wife at that stage, I think. He just it was a shame in a way, because that car mechanically was really sound. It was quite low mileage, but just, yeah, like I say, the body had degraded so much, with all the sea air, I think it probably was, like I say. So yeah, I don't think he was particularly bothered by it going. Replaced by a slightly more modern, I think it was like his original car was an A-Reg, what's that, 83, something like that. I think the one we bought was an E87. So I mean, not a huge difference in terms of age, but clearly the one that we purchased had been garaged all its life and maybe have had a little bit of paint here and there. So it did look very nice. Should have kept it as well. Don't know why, but when he passed away, we ended up selling it. But that's a big regret.
Yeah.
That's a good topic actually you should have on this podcast.
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be quite a few of those.
That probably caused us to shed a few tears of our own, I'd imagine.
Well, that's a really cool story.
Yeah, it's quite unusual. And looking back, I'm sort of think, I can't believe that we actually did that. Not because it was a huge amount of effort, but it was just a bit, I don't know, maybe a bit risky, really. Sort of just assuming that he would just accept that we're going to throw away that old car that he had for however many years and replace it with this one. But I guess in a way that's probably why he kept the old one so long, because it did still function and the feel of it was still the same. So I think that was why we thought, oh, let's see if we can get hold of something that's just a bit more nicely conditioned and everything works. Because by the time his old one went, none of the electric windows and stuff worked. It functioned as a vehicle in terms of you could drive it backwards and forwards and stop. But the sunroof didn't work, the windows didn't work. So yeah, like I say, you know, come to driving in the summer, that sort of things, it's not really good fun.
What did your mum make of it? Did you tell her before the whole stunt kind of went down, or?
We did no, I don't think we told her at all. No, we didn't tell her actually, because in fact, what we did the day that we gave it to Dad, my mum was working in the chemist in the village, and we drove to pick her up from work in that car. And normally, I think Dad would have picked her up in the old car. So I think we just parked in the normal position. And I remember she came out the shop and she sort of she didn't really clock that was her family in that car. So yeah, when she saw it and stuff, and then we obviously told her the story, I think she was quite emotional. And she still sort of talks about that story now as sort of being a nice thing that her sons did.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the story of the old Silver Shadow and the big green thing.
I seem to recall the car changing colour. Sometimes you get a lift to work, and I was like,
that would be it. Yeah, you would have seen that little crossover of silver to green overnight, probably.
Yeah.
But I mean, he loved driving that car, and we got it for him. There'd be much more sort of reason for him to go out and take my mum to, you know, for dinner, all that sort of stuff, and you just wouldn't have done without that. So I think that's definitely if anyone's thinking of doing this, I'd definitely say go for it.
Yeah.
But no, I think that rounds up the story of my dad's car, and that vehicle, obviously the silver one, was kind of his thing. I think people knew that was him. You know, there weren't many of those cars around back then. It stood out in among a world of, you know, Vauxhalls and Fords and Rovers. So it's one of those things, isn't it? Cars make you feel good, don't they? People buy nice cars to make themselves feel nice. Maybe a bit of a materialistic thing. But I think that's certainly why he liked that car so much. I think it just did make him feel good. So yeah, the one that we bought him, we bought that to make him feel good. And I think it did for those last few months.
I really like the story. I really like the story. So you guys getting your dad the Merc, pretty unusual, really.
Yeah, at that time it was doable. Like now, if somebody had a car and you wanted to replace, you might be going to the thousands potentially to try and find something that's the same. So, I mean, we were fortunate in that that car turned up quite out of the blue. I don't even know why I was looking for those cars. I didn't go onto eBay with the intention of, I'm going to find a replica of Dad's old Merc and we're going to buy it. I was just on there for some reason.
Thank you very much, John. Any words of thanks for the people who have kind of tuned in?
Thanks for tuning in, and I'm probably the most surprised that I'm back doing this for a second time.
You've had a recall.
I've had a recall. We've had the second date. We've gone for a coffee and look forward to the next one. Hopefully a few more of you will join us.
Indeed. Yeah, fingers crossed. Thanks for joining us. It's been good fun. And until the next time, here's the credits. Thanks for tuning into My Dad's Car. We're new at this and really appreciate you listening and supporting the podcast. If you enjoyed it, please click subscribe so you don't miss an episode. Give us a follow on social media and tell your friends to tune in too if you think it will be up their street.